Hello, recruit, and welcome to Astroneer Academy 303 Automation Basics. Until recently, our courses have taught you how to obtain and create resources using your terrain tool, vehicles, and various production modules. Each of these production techniques are fairly hands-on, requiring a great deal of your time and attention. Considering that the day-night cycle on Silva is only 12 minutes long, there's not much leisure time left for a very busy pudding-filled spacesuit. I don't know about you, but I'd rather spend my time playing with glastropods than mining in caves. Fortunately, Exodynamics introduced automation so that machines can extract, produce, and synthesize materials while you sit back, relax, and then chase the cheeky space snails that got away again. Automation is an incredibly broad topic, making it impossible to cover it all in a single course. At the highest level, automation encompasses two main ideas. The first, production, includes the production of resources, items, and power. The second, logistics, includes the movement and storage of resources and items. There is even an entire category of automation items, sensors, and repeaters that factor into both production and logistics and will be covered in an Astroneer Academy 303 Extra. We will cover logistics in a couple of weeks by way of a course that explores numerous active automated production lines. Today, we will limit our discussion to the basic automation production items and identify their functionality. Let's get started. When the second wave of automation was introduced to the Astroneer training program, several existing modules were updated to allow them to integrate into industrial scale production. If you think back to our discussion of these various production modules, you'll recall that many of them include a blue repeater button on their control panels. Early on, if you wanted to create a dozen hydrazine, you had to provide the resources to the chemistry lab and press the big green button a dozen times. The addition of the repeater button was a huge improvement and opened the doors to creating large-scale automated production facilities. With that bit of history out of the way, I want to turn your attention to a few automation-related missions, beginning with Arm Yourself. No, your terrain tool has not suddenly gained any munitions capabilities. The arming in question here is actually an auto arm, which is unlocked in the research catalog for 1,500 bytes and is created on the small printer from graphite and aluminum. An auto arm must be placed on a tier 2 or larger storage slot on a powered platform or vehicle in order to function. An auto arm will consume power at a rate of 1 unit per second when it is turned on, even if it is inactive. If you use a large number of auto arms, you will want to take this power consumption into account, or your power network may struggle to keep up. At first glance, the auto arm appears rather simple, but do not let appearances fool you. The auto arm has plenty of functionality built in. If you interact with an auto arm, you will discover that you can turn the auto arm on and off. When you turn it on, the arm will raise into a ready state. When you turn it off, the arm will return to its resting state. This functionality is possible even when an auto arm is completely unpowered. Also, when you interact with an auto arm, 2 circles will appear close by, one green and one blue. An auto arm can only move items in a single direction, and those circles are indicating input and output respectively. So if I want to move items from the left to the right in this scene, the green circle needs to be on the left with the blue circle on the right. If I then want to move all those items back using an auto arm, I first need to pick up the auto arm and rotate it to face the opposite direction. When powered and turned on, the auto arm will seek out any and all tier 1 items within its input area. If it finds one, it'll pick it up and rotate it around 180 degrees. It will then place its held item into any storage slot in the output area. If there is no storage slot available, or if all of the storage slots are full, the auto arm will hold the item until a slot becomes available. Once it has placed the item, the arm will rotate back around and will continue to repeat this process until there are no small tier 1 items in its input area. The entire process of picking up an item, rotating around to place it, then rotating back around to pick up another item takes roughly 3.5 seconds if the auto arm is fully powered. If it is not fully powered, then the entire process will take longer. Auto arms do not discriminate about what they pick up, and they are very eager to do their job, so pay attention when you're replacing them. If there are small items in its input area, it will pick them up. Printers, lights, QTRTGs, and just about any other small item you have placed is fair game for an auto arm. The only small items that are truly safe from an auto arm's grasp are items you have stored in your backpack. That isn't to say your backpack is completely immune to the auto arm's eagerness. If you happen to step within its output area and there are any open storage slots in your backpack, an auto arm will fill those slots. You can somewhat tame their enthusiasm by utilizing the auto arm's filter slot, which is the small tier 1 storage slot in the center of the auto arm's base. When the filter slot is empty, an auto arm will pick up any and all tier 1 items it can reach. If you place an item into the filter slot and then interact with the auto arm, the tooltip will indicate that the auto arm is now filtered to only pick up items matching its filter. So if you want to pick up a bunch of carbon that has been smelted, but leave behind the organic so it can be processed by the smelter, you can place a carbon nugget into the filter slot. That's just one example. Pretty much any tier 1 item can be placed into the filter slot. The auto arm is technically a logistical item, not a production item, since its purpose is to move stuff from one place to another. Yet without the auto arm, many of the automated production items would not be able to function. So while the auto arm may not be a production item itself, its role in automation is so integral that we have included it in today's course for Automation Basics. Basic storage slots are not the only destination for items moved by an auto arm. If you place your auto arm with its output area surrounding the input slot of any module, including printers, the auto arm will be able to supply resources to that module. Likewise, if you place an auto arm so that its input slot is aligned with the output slot of a module, the auto arm will be able to pick up and move any items or resources that have been produced. This is where the auto arm really shines. In this example, I want to automate the production of hydrazine without using a very large platform, but there is not enough storage space to accommodate the chemistry lab, along with a canister of hydrogen, a canister of ammonium, and a medium fluid and soil canister to store the hydrazine. While I could stand around manually supplying the resources or retrieving the hydrazine as it is produced, thanks to the auto arm, I don't have to do that. Instead, I can have one auto arm targeting the output on an atmospheric condenser, with its output targeting the gas input slot on the chemistry lab. This will move the required hydrogen from the atmospheric condenser to the chemistry lab. Then a second auto arm can be set up to target the output slot of the chemistry lab, so it can pick up each completed canister of hydrazine and drop it into the medium fluid and soil canister I have placed in the auto arm's output area. Then I can place hydrogen and hydrazine in the respective auto arm filter slots to ensure that they do not pick up anything unintended. Finally, I'll set the ammonium canisters to output, press the chemistry lab's repeat button, and then start it up using the big green button. Now I can tend to other matters while it chugs away, producing and storing hydrazine by itself. The auto arm's long reach allows it to extend upwards to grab items above, but this reach has limits. For example, this auto arm has no trouble reaching items on the top of this tall platform. But if I add a tall storage and place an item way up there in one of its storage slots, the auto arm cannot reach high enough to grab the item, even though the tall platform is within the input area. A good deal of trial and error may be required to ensure your auto arm can reach its intended target. Because the Astroneer training program is imperfect, it is possible that auto arms may occasionally drop items onto the ground instead of placing them in a storage slot. This is difficult to reproduce reliably, but if two auto arms attempt to place an item into the same storage slot at the exact same moment, both auto arms may believe they have placed the item, even though only one of those items have been properly slotted. This will result in the other item falling to the ground. This error seems to happen more often when the auto arms are far from your current location. Exodynamics is aware of this problem, and it may be resolved in future updates to the training simulation. I set this scene up in hopes of recreating the aforementioned issue. I even spent a fair amount of time away from this area to encourage the process. While neither auto arm dropped any of the organic, they did highlight another peculiar behavior. Since there is a very small period between the portable smelter completing its process and the carbon appearing, the auto arms occasionally place organic onto the smelter, resulting in two resources attached to the same slot. While this did not seem to cause any issues with the smelters, it is still very strange behavior, and I doubt that Exodynamics intended this. Now that we have investigated the auto arm, let's complete the Arm Yourself mission. You will need to create an auto arm and utilize it to store any small Tier 1 item. Since the prerequisite mission, Smeltering Hot, occurs fairly early in your adventure, you should have Arm Yourself available for completion. Except, you don't even need to create an auto arm if you were willing to be a bit patient. Way back in an Astroneer Academy 104 Quick Bite, we discussed taking some time early in your adventure to scout out debris that contains functional power producers. You can also use that journey to investigate larger debris for research items and resources. The larger debris can also contain an auto arm, though they are not highly abundant. I would not suggest taking a trip to rummage through debris just for an auto arm, however. That would be silly since they're fairly easy to create. If you do encounter one, you can utilize that found auto arm to complete this mission. Once you've completed the mission, you can claim your reward of one large extended platform and its respective schematic at a landing pad. When you unpack the large extended platform, you might find its design to be a bit odd. It is essentially two medium platforms C connected by a large bar. This unique platform made its appearance in the training simulation right around the same time as the auto arm. When you place an auto arm on one end of this platform, you'll notice that the storage slots on the other end are aligned perfectly with either the input or output area of an auto arm. Of course, this is by design. The large extended platform was intended to assist you in setting up auto arms to move items across larger distances. By placing several of these auto arms in a line and attaching an auto arm to each one, you can set up something similar to a conveyor belt. Of course, trains have mostly supplanted the need for these long lines of platforms and auto arms, as the trains are able to move a far greater quantity of resources over incredibly long distances, all while consuming much less power than dozens of auto arms would need to span the same distance. That isn't to say that the large extended platform has become completely useless, however. It is still very useful for automated production and moving items over shorter distances. We will see this platform in action when we discuss automating limited time events. The extra large extended platform has a similar design, though it features a large Tier 3 slot in the center. The two medium Tier 2 slots to either end are positioned perfectly to allow an auto arms input or output area to align with the center portion of the platform. An auto arm can come in handy when completing our next automation related mission, Stuffed Storage. To complete this one, you need to create and fill a medium resource canister, though using an auto arm to fill the canister is entirely optional. The ability to toggle the canister's output elevates them from being just higher capacity storage to an integral part of an automation facility. We discussed all of these storage tools in an Astroneer Academy 204 Extra, so you can review that course if you need a refresher on how to create and utilize each of these tools. However you choose to fill a medium canister, doing so will complete the Stuffed Storage mission, and you can claim your reward of 500 research bytes. Completing Stuffed Storage will also unlock our final automation related mission, Unearthed. This one will kick our automation into high gear with the introduction of the Auto Extractor, which is unlocked in the research catalog for 7,500 bytes and is created on the large printer from 1 rubber, 1 tungsten carbide, 1 steel, and 1 exo chip. When unpacked, it is a freestanding, extra-large Tier 4 item. Each of its 3 legs has a power cable plug to connect it to power. When active, an auto extractor will consume power at a rate of 8 units per second. You must manually turn it on after connecting it to your power network in order for it to begin extracting a resource. In normal usage, and when fully powered, an auto extractor will require roughly 55.5 seconds to extract a single resource nugget. At that rate, it will take an auto extractor close to half an hour to fill a medium resource canister. But extracting a single nugget of any resource with an auto extractor will complete the Unearthed mission, and you can use a mission log on a landing pad to claim your reward of 1 large resource canister. I can hear some of you thinking, if it takes so long, why would I want to use an auto extractor? I can dig up 32 nuggets of a resource way quicker using my rover with a drill. And yeah, you're right, Recruit. If speed is your only consideration, the auto extractor might not be for you. But speed isn't everything. Sometimes you also want to consider efficiency. While your terrain tool or a drill on a rover can extract resources faster, the auto extractor is more efficient. That is because an auto extractor will produce far more resource nuggets from the same resource deposit than your terrain tool can. Here's a quick example using a modest resin deposit. With my terrain tool, I am able to collect this many resin nuggets. Now, if I reload a copy of this instance of the training simulation and let an auto extractor do its thing, well, yeah, I don't have a final number yet because it's still going. But I already have way more than I did when I fully depleted the deposit using my terrain tool. Furthermore, thanks to our imperfect training simulation, picking up an auto extractor and placing it back down will usually result in being able to extract additional resources even after it initially appeared that the resource deposit was depleted. But we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves here. Let's finish investigating the features of the auto extractor. There are 3 cylinders on the auto extractor that, when placed atop a resource deposit, illuminate green to indicate roughly how abundant the resource is. This illumination can range from just a small sliver of green all the way to completely filling the indicator. As the resource deposit is depleted, the indicators will update to reflect the diminishing supply. When you deploy the auto extractor, it is a good practice to reposition it a few times, paying attention to the indicators to determine the best location for maximum extraction potential. There is a small Tier 1 slot on the side of the auto extractor. This is its output slot. Similar to other production modules, if the output slot on an auto extractor is full, the auto extractor will cease operation until that output slot is cleared. Thankfully, this is not as big of a problem as on other modules, since the auto extractor also has a built-in medium Tier 2 storage slot up top. If this medium storage slot is empty, any resource nuggets from the output slot will automatically relocate up there. You can attach a power producer there to keep the auto extractor powered if you wish, but it is better utilized for storage. Medium storage, a medium storage silo, or even better, a medium resource canister, those all fit up there. When the auto extractor completes a resource nugget, it will automatically relocate to that storage slot or any other storage item you have attached to it. The storage slot on the top is also within the reach of an auto arm, so you can easily configure an auto arm to retrieve the resource nuggets from the auto extractor and then move them to storage or another production module. Though I should point out that if you have a medium resource canister atop the extractor, an auto arm will be unable to pull resources from the extractor until the canister is completely full. Further, if that canister is set to output enabled, then no resources will be stored in the canister at all, essentially wasting both resources and storage space. Let's jump back to the automated hydrazine production from a moment ago. There just happens to be 2 decently sized ammonium deposits nearby. I can deploy an auto extractor on each one and then use auto arms to route the ammonium to the chemistry lab. Now, instead of just 2 canisters with a total of 64 ammonium, this hydrazine factor has significantly more production potential. So much, in fact, that if I have a landing pad nearby, and if I add a few more medium fluid and soil canisters, I now have a very handy thruster refueling station. I can land, swap out an empty medium canister of hydrazine for a full one, then blast off again with enough hydrazine to keep my shuttle flying for quite some time. The storage slot on top of an auto extractor can be utilized for more than just storage or holding a power producer. If, for example, you want to extract wolframite, you will eventually need to process that in a smelter to get tungsten because wolframite is not currently used in any recipe. You can attach a portable smelter to the top of the auto extractor and, used in conjunction with an auto arm filtered to tungsten, now you're extracting the wolframite, smelting it in place, and then moving the completed tungsten to storage. And you really only need one single portable smelter, as it can smelt one nugget of a resource in roughly a quarter of the time typically required for the auto extractor to produce a nugget. Like platforms, an auto extractor has no problem attaching to any terrain. This means you can use it to extract resources from the side of a sheer cliff or even the ceiling of a cave. Just be certain you do not manipulate the nearby terrain, as doing so will dislodge the auto extractor, usually causing it to fall to the ground. But what if you're extracting a resource high up on a cave ceiling or wall, and you want to integrate an auto arm to retrieve the resource? The auto arm might not be able to reach high enough. We covered this exact scenario in an Astroneer Academy 204 Extra discussing the stacked platforms. Utilizing a stacked platform in this case is the simplest solution to this problem. Another great feature of the auto extractor is that it retrieves resources without disturbing the terrain whatsoever. That means you will not end up with huge holes marking all of the spots where you extracted resources. That leads to a unique characteristic of the auto extractor. It cannot be used to obtain organic. That is because organic is not available in nodes or deposits, unlike other natural resources. Instead, organic is only available to collect as you manipulate the terrain with a drill or your terrain tool. That's okay though, because you can always utilize the soil centrifuge or the tapper to obtain any organic needed for automated production. If you need a refresher on the tapper or the soil centrifuge, you can refer back to Astroneer Academy 103 and its respective extra courses. And rumor has it that upcoming Megatech items may be able to produce organic automatically. The auto extractor is also unique in that it is one of only 2 extra large items that can be attached to storage without repacking it. This makes it easier to transport an auto extractor without needing to repackage it first. You will want to turn off the auto extractor before placing it on a rover, however. If you don't, it will consume power from the rover when it's attached, which might just leave you stranded. While we are discussing moving an auto extractor, you may find that you wish to deploy them in remote areas with ample resource deposits. Auto extractors do not appear as nav points on your compass, however, so if you want to be able to return to the location later, it is probably a good idea to drop a beacon nearby as well. There is yet one more unique feature of the auto extractor. When active, it creates quite a racket, leading to its nickname, the Thumper. Listen closely. Hear that sound? That is the sound of an auto extractor in the same level of caves, but about a quarter of a way on the other side of the planet. Yeah, the auto extractor is that powerful. Regardless of where you deploy an auto extractor, you will want to inspect the resource node. You can do this by simply engaging your terrain tool and scanning it over the surrounding terrain without actually digging anything up. If your terrain tool indicates that there is more than one resource nearby, you may wish to find a different location for your auto extractor. This is because an auto extractor cannot currently be filtered to extract a single resource. If the terrain it is standing upon has multiple resources, the auto extractor will retrieve all of those resources. If you have a filtered auto arm, or your extractor is otherwise intended to be extracting a specific resource, you may find that the auto extractor eventually stops extracting resources when it no longer has available storage for the unintended resource. If you absolutely must deploy an auto extractor in a location with mixed resources, then you should plan on having multiple auto arms filtered to those resources so you can move the undesired resources away from your production chain. You can also utilize a medium storage silo placed atop the auto extractor, as it will be able to accept the mixed resources without issue. Before we wrap up today, I want to take a moment to address the elephant in the room. No, not that elephant. There's a question that often comes up when we discuss automation that goes a little something like, automation is great and all, but it seems a bit pointless. Why would I ever need to scale production to the levels provided by automation? And that is a good question. Up until very recently, it seemed there were very few reasons to create large automated production chains in the Astroneer training program. For the most part, Astroneers produced hundreds, if not thousands, of resources and items simply because they could. This has shifted recently with the announcement of an update to the training simulation that will introduce projects on a scale previously unseen in the training program. While it remains to be seen if our automation will need to scale to truly industrial levels, these projects will certainly require far greater numbers of resources than anything we have seen before. As to whether or not those massive projects will be accompanied by any sense of purpose, I suppose we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, if you want to engage with truly industrial scale automation production that has a purpose, I've heard that the pioneers of Exodynamics' main competitor, Fixit Incorporated, are doing some interesting things on Massage 2AB in the binary system of Akicha.
This project is part of the Save the Day program, the largest united undertaking in human history, destined to save us all.
Today, we have discussed basic automated production and investigated a handful of modules that are useful for production. Next time, in an Astroneer Academy Extra, we will discuss various sensors, buttons, and repeaters that can be utilized to make our automation production completely hands-free. And in a later course, we will take a deeper dive into how various aspects of sensor-related items can be used in conjunction with railways to help move resources and items automatically. Until then, I'm Brandon, reminding you to keep looking to the stars.